I have Act 5, Scene 1 of Hamlet, lines 15 through 45. The two main characters being featured in this scene are the two gravediggers, labeled as gravedigger and other. It's important to note that they aren't given names, but rather they're given titles from their profession. And that's important to note because it's not who they are that's important in this passage, it's what they do. It's their profession that's their defining factor. In this passage, these two gravediggers are talking while they're digging Ophelia's grave, and they discuss how she drowned herself and that there's a difference between being drowned and drowning yourself, and how the latter should not allow you to be buried with a Christian burial, even though she is. And they talk about how it's not fair that she should be buried as a Christian and at a Christian burial, even though she committed suicide. And the only reason that this is happening is because she's a gentlewoman, meaning she's of a higher class. As the passage goes on, they keep discussing this, and then they start joking and bantering with each other. And the most important part of this passage, the purpose of this passage, is to provide relief from all the heaviness of the rest of the play, and also to show that life still goes on, even though there's so much drama and tragedy occurring. Life still goes on, especially with the common people who are somewhat affected by the royalty's actions. The common people are somewhat affected, but they still can go on with their lives while the royalty's lives are falling apart. So the playful banter between the two gravediggers shows that there's still light in life, even despite the dramatic and tragic happenings. They are a reminder that there are other people still there, and also they are still connected to the situation while not necessarily being completely consumed by it. Humor is extremely important in this play because it's so dense and dramatic that it can be overwhelming. And even though they're digging a grave for Ophelia, they still are so lighthearted, and it's offering some sort of relief from the whole situation. You can tell that these two characters are close to each other by the way they talk with one another and the language they use. They use very casual language, like, is it in line 23, they use a lot of slang, and then in line 24, they use some more slang, like, will you have the truth? And this just shows like how the casual language they use shows that they're of a somewhat lower class and of similar social standings with one another, and they're comfortable in each other's presence. The gravedigger named that's referred to as the other, so the other gravedigger, I would say that he's younger, maybe less experienced than the other gravedigger, because he's always kind of questioning the gravedigger, and the gravedigger is the one who has all the answers. Like in line 22, he says, "But what is law?" after the gravedigger gives his whole opinion about drowning versus being drowned. And also, he interrupts gravedigger while he's talking, so they're very familiar with one another. And the gravedigger is familiar with him too, because he calls him names and insults him in a somewhat joking way. Like in line 36, it says, "What art a heathen? How dost thou understand that scripture?" Line 36 to 37, that is. The language that they use and how they interact with each other is what shows a relationship between the two. And their positions, both being gravediggers, that work together, it already gives them a basis for a relationship. The significance of the humor in this passage to the overall play is extremely important because it's a relief. It's something that can give the audience a break. It's something that's really relaxing. even though what they're doing is not necessarily considered a relaxing thing. They're digging a grave for a girl who committed suicide. The two instances that they make jokes are from lines 30 to 32. There's no ancient gentlemen, but gardeners, ditchers, and grave makers. They hold up Adam's profession. It's really ironic to look up to such people like grave makers, ditchers, and gardeners. And that's not necessarily what's deemed valuable in society, but it's funny because it's coming from a gravedigger. So it's as a gravedigger, they must look up to people who dig. So that's what's funny about it. What, like, their profession and what they do is what makes that joke funny. And the second instance where they have humor is from lines 42 to 45. What is he that builds stronger than either the mason, the shipwright, or the carpenter? The gallows maker, for that frame outlives 1,000 tenants. The gravedigger gives the other gravedigger a riddle, and this riddle is really ironic as well because they are gravediggers making jokes about hanged men and executed men. They're calling the killed and executed men tenants, like comparing the tenants of a house to those who are being executed. It's a bad joke. And it's pretty much talking about how gallows get more use than a house does because it goes through more people, because that's its job. Its job is to go through a lot of people. And again, it's because that they're gravediggers that this joke is particularly funny. In fact, if someone else said it, it'd probably be in quite bad taste, but having these two discuss it between themselves and playfully banter with one another is what really makes it a funny joke. In this entire passage, there was a lot of playful banter and joking and teasing between these two characters. And this is a far cry from the rest of the play, which discusses much heavier topics and much deeper ideas, or deeper emotions, I would say. This is very lighthearted, and it offers a breather for the rest of it.